Hey now, it's Brace for Impact, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it's still the same. We're talking Impact Wrestling. I am your host, Mike Gilbert. JD is out this week. JD had a wrestling tournament, and I am actually recording very late at night. Well, it's not late for me here, Hawaii time. It's actually, like 10 something Hawaii time, but for everybody else, it's a lot different. So there was no way that JD and I, being 4 hours apart, that he was actually going to be able to record and watch the show. It's just way too late for him. And then I didn't want to bug anybody on the East Coast. So I'm just doing it at my leisure, man. And that's cool with me. But I'm glad that I was able to do it this week. It's like that JD is not on the show this week because Impact was like 10 times better this week than it was last week. Last week was one of their worst episodes we had seen in a long time, and I tried my best, everybody, to find the positive in that episode because I knew, before JD and I went on the air, I knew how much he hated that. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna let him have his night and just talk about how much he hated the episode because he was so passionate about it. And I was going to try to find some silver linings, to say the least, but it was last week was not a good episode. This week was really good. Was it like, was there anything groundbreaking? Was there anything like crazy newsworthy? Not necessarily, but I did think that it was a fun show overall. And we're gonna get into that news here in a couple of minutes. But the first thing that I think that we need to talk about. It's not breaking news because it did happen just last week. Um, Mercedes Moné, the former Sasha Banks, she actually took to Instagram and she posted a picture of her and Mickie James, essentially teasing a match with the Knockouts champion Mickie James. Mickie had the belt in the photo. I think it was her stock picture from ImpactWrestling.com. She posted that, and it's hilarious actually. It actually struck fear to the hearts of the entitled AEW fans. There's this whole core group of fans in AEW, and I'm going to talk about them later too on the Patreon. um, they feel like they're entitled to every single free agent that comes available. Like every free agent that's a big star, they think that they should be able to have them in that promotion. And the reason why that is because Tony Khan signed a lot of people and brought them in, and a lot of it worked, and a lot of it has not. Honestly, he's had some misses with a lot of those free agent signings. But everybody assumed that Mercedes Martinez was going to go to AEW. She ended up not showing up. She signed with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and now she's teasing a match with Mickie James, where I have not seen her tease any matches with anybody from AEW. So that's kind of cool. If you're an Impact fan, right? Could she somehow, some way, end up wrestling in Impact? Um, it's possible. Will she? Well, I'm no longer as big a skeptic as I once was. However, I do think that if the match between Mickie and Mercedes happens, it'll actually be at the Multiverse United show. I have not heard any rumors of that. That's just me speculating based on things, some of the trends that we're seeing, and they do have that big show coming up on March 30th at the Globe in Los Angeles, WrestleMania weekend. I do think that Rebellion is going to be the bigger show. And that's going to surprise people that I'm saying that, because you would think the joint show with Impact and New Japan would be the bigger one. But honestly, there's like 1,000 shows going on that weekend, and they're airing at like 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, 11 p.m. Eastern on a Thursday night. So I don't think that's going to get a ton of buys. Not that Impact does very well on pay-per-view anyway. I just think that Rebellion is the bigger show. It's going to be on a better night. It's going to be on Sunday night in prime time, with no football to compete with them. So, if I had all power, right, and I have none, I would I would encourage Scott D'Amore and New Japan to make that match for either a big show in Japan or the biggest possible show for Impact. And right now, the one that's coming up is Rebellion, and that's where I would like to see that match. But I think if we do get it, and I'm not saying we are, because people say a lot of stuff on social media and it doesn't mean a whole lot until it actually happens. Um, but if we do get that match, I think that it will actually be at the Multiverse United show, and that makes that show a lot bigger. Now, we already got the Will Ospreay versus Mike Bailey. We have Moose versus Jeff Cobb. We have Josh Alexander versus Kushida. I think that Mercedes versus Mickie would be the biggest match on that show, and that would be the show that you headline with. It's not going to be the best match on the show, but I think that's the biggest possible match that you can make. Well, not possible, but that's the biggest match out there. If that ends up on that show, that's a huge match. Like I said, the only problem is it's a Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern. So you're not really going to have as big a possible audience. So for me, in my taste, I say, save it for a giant New Japan show or save it for one of the Impact pay-per-views. And Rebellion is going to be a pretty big show. So that's where I would like to see that. But we'll see how it all plays out. I'm not saying this is coming, but I'm not the most confident, like we've seen Will Ospreay tease, Impact Wrestling stuff for a couple of years now, and he still hasn't, he just finally showed up, coming up soon, but that's because it was a joint show in New Japan. So I don't know, like I'm like 50-50 on whether or not this will actually happen. Just because I think that's a good place to be if you're an Impact fan, or if you're like me, an Impact podcaster, and you actively want the company to do well because it helps your podcast. So I need them to make these big matches so that way I can talk about cool shit. That's important to me. Right. But if you're like one of these hardcore fans and you just want to see the company be successful because you're passionate about it, I think that going 50-50 is a good way not to set yourself up for failure there. It's good to have your expectations a little bit low. And then if it does happen, great. And if it doesn't happen, well, look, we never had this person in the company anyway, so it's not like you lost anything. But I do think it's cool that she's at least teasing it, right? When before, I don't think that obviously when she was in WWE, she wouldn't be doing stuff like that. But when she got released, I didn't think that we had a hope in hell of seeing this woman in this promotion. But now it's becoming more of a realistic possibility. Will it ever happen? Who knows? But I'm pretty excited for it. I hope that it does happen. Mercedes is a huge star. I think that the Knockouts division could use a boost like that. If they do wrestle, and I fully believe that this weekend at Battle in the Valley in San Jose, live on Fight TV, I do think that she's going to beat Kairi Sane for the IWGP Women's Championship. And I think that's the move if you're New Japan. I think that you had Kairi, who's a pretty big name, win the title. You bring that title back to the States. The biggest possible name that is available for them to use in the United States is Mercedes Moné, and I think that that's the person that should be having the title right now, and that will legitimize that belt. And then if she wins that, I say that she should go into the next big Impact pay-per-view and win that belt. Kind of do what Kenny Omega was doing with AEW. I don't think that would hurt the Knockouts division. I only think that it'll help the Knockouts division. She doesn't have to wrestle all that often. You get her for a couple of pay-per-views, and hopefully she's a boost to business. I don't think that she'd be as big a boost as Kenny Omega was for those couple of pay-per-views he was around, but I do think that she would be absolutely a boost over what we have right now. There's nobody on the roster right now that is a bigger star. There's more famous people, but there's nobody on the roster right now that people want to see wrestle more than Mercedes Moné. Now, I do apologize if I called her Martinez. I keep getting confused, but it's Mercedes Moné or Sasha Banks. I should have just stuck with Sasha Banks because that's what I'm used to calling her. But exciting times lie ahead. We do have a lot to talk about. So, stick with me. I'm going to be covering this. I'm going to be covering this the whole time. And we will see. And hopefully by next week, we have more of an idea of what's going on. And maybe by next week, JD will be back and I'll get JD's thoughts on this stuff. But big stuff lie ahead. So stay tuned after the Impact recap and head to patreon.com/fightgamemedia. We got some news about Jay White. Some very interesting news. I don't have inside scoops and I don't have inside sources. But it's like I know people that know a couple of people, and I was talking to them the last few days, and I have a pretty good idea where he's going, so I want to talk about that. and where he's going to end up after this weekend. Plus, we'll talk a little Jerry Jarrett. We'll talk some Ring of Honor news, MLW ratings, and a little bit more. Not a ton of Impact news, so I'm sorry we don't have much of that on the Patreon today. But I will do my best to cover all the news and notes going on in pro wrestling. But let's go ahead and let's get into the to the recap here. And like I said, tonight's show was really good. On BTI, Deonna Purrazzo defeated Steph DeLander. And that was talking BTI. Thank you, folks. Thank you for talking BTI with us. DeLander's got something, man. I think that she's somebody that I would hope would stick around and get to maybe have a little run here in Impact. We'll see. Maybe if she gets a bit more experience, and then she could be something for this promotion. These are the type of people that Impact should be getting behind and signing. So I guess at one point Giselle Shaw attacked Purrazzo after the match and tried to spill a bowl of chili. Somebody on Twitter thought it was actually dog food, which I think it was just chili from their catering. But Purrazzo, so Purrazzo's relegated to the pre-show doing bullshit with Giselle Shaw and bowls of chili. So there you go. But I guess Purrazzo ducked and Jiva Doll got. I didn't watch it, so I would never watch that. But they got right into the main show, and the main show was awesome. KUSHIDA was in the opening match. He defeated Chris Bay. I think this match, I think they went over 20 minutes. I didn't know they went over 20 minutes. I had to look to see what the timestamp on YouTube was, and I was like, oh my gosh, these guys went for a while. This was a hell of a match. Like, that's when you know you got a really good match, is whenever you're like 20 minutes into this and you don't even realize how long you've been watching it. But this was awesome, man. KUSHIDA's great. I mean, Chris Bay is obviously great. KUSHIDA's a legend. They had just an excellent match. We'll go here to the finish. KUSHIDA tried to pull Bay towards him, but he did a mule kick that broke the grip. And it was very cool, according to Josiah. KUSHIDA hit a couple kick against the ropes and then hit a flip dive over the corner into the floor on Bay. That was awesome. KUSHIDA punted the arm at Bay and went for the hoverboard lock, but Bay countered out. Bay sent KUSHIDA into the ropes for a springboard leg drop to the back of KUSHIDA's head for a 2 count. Bay went for the art of finesse, but KUSHIDA countered into an armbar. Bay rolled through into the Gato clutch for a 2 count, and KUSHIDA countered into a Kimura, which he turned into a cradle for a pin. That was really cool, man. That whole thing, and that like a lot more happened in that match than what I just said. So I'm pretty sure that Impact is going to release that on YouTube. So if you have not seen that, you could probably go into their YouTube channel over the weekend, and it's probably going to be available without having to watch the rest of the show. I highly recommend you guys go out of your way to see that. And so KUSHIDA gets the win. They're setting up the big trios match with Austin, Bay, and Kenta versus the Time Machines, which would be KUSHIDA and the Motor City Machine Guns. They're real excited about this Kenta coming into the promotion because they actually started selling T-shirts last week of Kenta, which I don't know if that's indicative of how long we're going to get this guy in the company or how many times he's going to be around, but the relationship with New Japan is good enough that we're now selling Kenta T-shirts on shopimpact.com. And if it was, Kenta of 10 years ago, I might actually be interested in buying that shirt. But as we stated last week, it's Kenta, but it's not Kenta, right? It's New Japan Kenta. It's like Hideo Itami kind of broken down a little bit into Kenta. And he doesn't do a whole lot in New Japan. Maybe we can get a little bit of the Noah Kenta. Now, well, we'll say the last couple times he's gone to Noah, because New Japan and Noah have a working relationship, he has looked like the old Kenta. Not old Kenta, the old Kenta from like 2010. He actually has looked like that. So hopefully we get a little bit of that. And I think just being in the ring with the machine guns and the time machines, the machine guns of KUSHIDA is really going to be helpful for him. So looking forward to that. So after that, we go to this boring ass sit down. We had Santino with Bulky Ray and Tummy Dreamer, and they announced that they were going to do a busted open live with Dave LaGreca. I don't know what that means. Like, I guess so. It's like No Surrender Weekend. They're doing a live radio show, and I guess maybe they're gonna have a debate. or are they going to wrestle? I really don't know, because he kept saying that he wanted the mic over and over again. And then they talked about how like they weren't going to be friends anymore. I'm like, you guys are grown-ups in your 50s, and this is how you talk? You couple of dum-dums, man. But they said, oh, let's just go our separate ways. Let's not even be friends. And then the Bully just wanted Tommy out of the company. So what are you even good for anyway? I kind of agree with that. And then, but just eventually they decided they're doing Busted Open Live, which I still don't know what that means. If it's just a live radio show after No Surrender, I just don't care. But if it means we're not actually going to see them wrestle at the pay-per-view, I'm going to call a dub on that deal, because I thought we were going to get these two fat asses doing cookie sheets and bullshit for 20 minutes. And that was really going to piss me off, considering we got Speedball and Gresham on the fucking pre-show, and we got these two turd goblins on the fucking main show doing their same bullshit from 30 years ago. I thought that's what was going to happen, but it turns out maybe they're going to save their crap for afterwards, and I'm not going to watch it. So there you go. Next match, we got Steve Macklin. He defeated Rhino. Another good brawl. I liked it. They picked it back up here, man, after the abomination that was the previous segment. Macklin and Rhino. Rhino was able to turn the clock back. Macklin is great, by the way. I thought he really looked good in here with Rhino. This was just a good match. Rhino hit some shoulder tackles and a belly-to-belly out of the corner for a 2 count. Then he hit a spine buster on Macklin and called for the gore, but Macklin dodged and hit a spear of his own for the 2 count. Macklin went for the KIA, but Rhino blocked it, so Macklin slipped behind and hit Heath's finisher, so he hit Heath's move, so that's a little bit of foreshadowing for later. For the victory, a good win. So with Macklin, I think it's clear they're setting him up for a title shot with Josh Alexander. And if he doesn't win at No Surrender, that's going to be a mistake. But not only should he win, I feel like, and I felt like this before, like when he wrestled Dango a few weeks ago, I felt that he should just like take him down, elbow the crap out of him, make him bleed, and pin him in 3 minutes, right? I don't think you do that to Rhino in 3 minutes. He's a legend here, but you still haven't beat the crap out of him, right? Like that. If we're going to push this guy to a title shot, we're going to make him a credible challenger for Josh Alexander, we need to turn him into a bad motherfucker. That's important. Bad motherfuckers draw money. And that's what we need out of this guy. If we're going to put him in the main event against Josh on a pay-per-view, we got to go all the way with him. He's going to start kicking ass, and some of these other people in this promotion need to just fucking lay down and take it, right? If we're going with Macklin as the top heel for a pay-per-view, some of y'all got to get your asses whooped. That's important. Let's do that. Impact needs to step their game up on that stuff, because I feel like a lot of times they have weak challengers, and we're like, well, the match will be good, so I'm going to look forward to it. If you have a good match and a hot story and an over character all at the same time, you got magic. Take a look at what's happening at WrestleMania. Smaller scale here in Impact, of course, and it's really hard to catch that lightning in a bottle. But there are things that you can actively do to build your challengers, right? And he's just, he went 8 minutes with Rhino, and it was a good match, but it wasn't like he beat the shit out of the guy. He might have got a heat on him after the match was over, but he didn't really do much during the match to make me think that he was, significantly better than Rhino. We got to get there with him if we're going to make him. I'm not saying he's going to win the title, but if we're going to push him to the thing, it's like, look, wrestling fans just understands like, hey, we put these two guys in the match, and it's just going to be a good match. If you want to get a lot more people to that, you need to tell that story. And making Macklin to be a badass villain, and then you go back into his history with being in the Marine Corps, being in the military, and how he reinvented himself here in Impact. You got a good backstory with this guy. I think you can really do something with him if they play their cards right. But right now, what they're doing is just for paint by numbers bullshit. So we got to do better there. Gia Miller, she was Masha Slamovich. She asked her a couple questions. Slamovich spoke in Russian. So I guess we're all supposed to assume that Gia knows Russian, or maybe Gia has like an earbud in and someone's like translating for her. But I really thought this was cool. I like Masha speaking Russian, and they got subtitles. I don't know why. I think it's awesome. She really sounds like a badass when she does that. But anyway, she said she's going to beat the shit out of Masha and then probably Mickie later. So, I mean, that was the gist of it. Zicky Dice, dummy. Zicky Dice announced that he found an opponent for Swinger. that had a worse record than they had and outwalked Barry Horowitz. And then Barry Horowitz proceeded to defeat Johnny Swinger. And this is what our friend Josiah said. He said this was a horrible match, but he loved it because it was funny horrible. So at one point, Swinger had the upper hand on Horowitz, and these guys could barely fucking move, but he had the upper hand on Horowitz, and Horowitz, who looked like he just got out of a 90-day rehab center, took a sip of vodka, hit a couple of Oxycontin, and head to the ring. But he could barely move, which was pretty funny. But at one point, Swinger had the upper hand on Horowitz, and the Kiss Demon, that guy who was at Bound for Glory a couple years ago, he showed up, distracted Swinger, and then Horowitz put him in an abdominal stretch and rolled him into a pinfall. So very, very 1960s funny here. But look, I enjoy Swinger, and I really like seeing Barry Horowitz out there. If they're gonna do this thing with Johnny Swinger is going to these different territories and bringing out old school jobbers, we got to go all the way with this thing, man. I want to see the Mulkeys. I want to see those guys. I want to see fucking Reno Riggins. I want to see Scott D'Amore, the Canadian guy who used to do jobs on WCW Worldwide on Saturday mornings. Let's do it. Let's go all the way, man. I kind of like this gimmick. It's pretty funny. And then we go to the back. Moose claimed he was going to get even with Joe Hendry to Gia Miller, and then walked out to the parking lot and started smashing a car with a pipe. Unfortunately for him, he did not. That was not Joe Hendry's car. It turns out it was Santino's car. And then Santino made a combat match, which I believe is going to be at No Surrender. I don't know. They didn't make that announcement, but sorry, swip of water for the working man. He made a combat match, and I don't know when that's going to be, but the combat match is where you wrestle in a ring and your weapons are like keyboards and mouse and cell phones and all that jazz. So we're going to get another match between Hendry and Moose. I like their last match. Sporting wise, there's no real reason for them to wrestle, and giving Moose a shot at the title is not really a good way to punish him for beating up your car, especially when the champion is a lot smaller than him. But hey, man, pro wrestling for you. Sometimes bullshit works, and hopefully they have a good match. We'll see. Next, we go to Eddie Edwards. He defeated Heath. Actually, hold on here. Heath defeated Eddie Edwards. Josiah, come on now. You're killing me here, bud. Heath defeated Eddie Edwards. So, Heath fought out, but Edwards choked Heath with his boot and then did a chin lock, and Heath fought out and ate a headbutt from Edwards. Heath hit a leg lariat in response and a knee strike. Edwards immediately fired back with a hard chop, going with the power slam from Heath. Or he got hit with a power slam from Heath. Edwards hit a huge superplex on Heath before hitting a Tiger driver for a 2 count. Edwards went for the diehard driver, but the lights went out and PCO's lightning could be seen, which distracted Edwards. So we had 2 distractions by music in back-to-back matches here. So we need a little quality control there, guys. And then Heath hit the wake-up call for the pinfall. So the match was really good up until that point, but of course we had the whole bullshit where the dummy loses to music, and so it was what it was. But obviously they're going towards this PCO feud still. So PCO then appeared behind Edwards and started beating him up. Hit a scorpion death drop. And then as he was going to the top rope to hit a senton, Eddie Edwards rolled out of the ring to avoid it. And they're going to continue their feud. So we'll see where that feud ends up, man. I feel like they've been feuding for 6 months. So I don't know when they're going to have this finale, but I hope we get to it soon. And then Design, they were muttering and meandering backstage saying nonsensical bullshit that nobody cares about. Which happened to be about their match with Kazarian and Yumimura coming up. Diener said that Callahan and himself would be facing Kazarian and Yumimura as they have step 5 of the 7 deadly steps to accept Callahan into this sucked. This was stupid. Speaking of stupid, We got another creepy promo from James Mitchell saying his boss, Rosemary's father, whom is either Satan or it's Kevin Sullivan, or they're the same person. I don't know. But sent him to deliver a present to the Death Dolls. They were the Hex, and they were coming for the Impact World Tag Team Championship. And then Allison Kay, I think that's her name, said that they were going to extinguish the competition. Yeah. So they're trying to work that hex thing. Anything with an X in it, they're gonna try to say hex. So that promo was not excellent whatsoever. Mitchell said the problem with selling a soul was that he rarely got sleep and had lots of work to do. So he's looking to cause some havoc. James Mitchell is so much better than Diener, according to our friend Josiah, but I thought this whole thing was terrible. Waste of time. Masha Slamovich beat the shit out of Alicia Edwards. And then after the match was over, continued. And Mickie James, who was on commentary, made the save, tried to break it up. And then Slamovich proceeded to beat her ass too, and then started to get the choke on her. So we'll see where that's going. But they're going to have their match in No Surrender. So a little heat for that match. Crazy Steve and Black Taurus are backstage. They're cutting another so a lot of creepy promos going on in this promotion. A little too much. Like I feel like they have too many characters that are like that belong in this like sci-fi realm that they're doing. Like I don't know who the fuck on this creative team is really in love with this bullshit, but god damn it, dude. Like one a show. You get one like set parameters here. Like, okay, dumb, you get one, okay? If you get a Crazy Steve Long promo, okay, you don't get the Hex and you don't get the Death Dolls and you don't get Witch A Woman. You just get Crazy Steve. You got to rotate that shit. You only get one of those per show, god damn it. But anyway, they were backstage cutting a creepy promo, and Steve said that if Trey Miguel put the X Division Championship on the line, he would leave him alone. Steve then challenged him to a monstrous ball match, as Tauros yelled in the background. So, and then next we go back to Santino and Fandango. They were backstage with Gresham and Bailey, and Santino announced that they would have a match at the pay-per-view. It's not the pre-show, of course. But Dingo interjected and saying they could team next week to face the Motor City Machine Guns. And then Barry Horowitz walked up and asked for the same deal that Swinger had, and then Santino then announced Horowitz against Rhino, to which said Horowitz said, you know what, brother, I'd rather go out on top. That was pretty funny. I actually like this whole segment, and believe it or not, I thought Tango was pretty funny in it, as he's trying to win approval from Santino, but then he ends up making a match which is outside of his lane and authority, which pissed Santino off, but because it was a good match, he had to allow it. So, and then kind of make it his own idea. So I have not been liking them two as a duo, but I did think in this skit specifically, I thought that they were pretty strong. And then we got to the main event, man. And look, this show was bookended by two awesome matches. And then they had two matches in the middle, and then one squash match. I thought the wrestling on the show was pretty outstanding. I thought some of the backstage stuff was a little bit too much for me, a little bit hokey, but the wrestling outweighed the bad backstage stuff. So overall, I thought this was a really good episode. And yeah, I don't think you can watch this match with Rich Swann and Kenny King and not be impressed with this episode of Impact. This was far and away way better than last week. And Kenny King, man, I gotta say, like, I was never a Kenny King fan. You know, he was an Impact before when I was kind of in and out of Impact, and I wasn't that impressed with him. And then he went to Ring of Honor. I think he was part of the All Night Express with Rhett Titus. Is that his name? Rhett Titus. And they were a good tag team, but anytime I've seen Kenny King like do solo matches, I just like there's just something about him that I just never cared about, like on camera, like not as a person, like on camera, right? But he's had two pretty damn good main events this year. The first one being the pit fight match with Speedball Bailey. I thought that was awesome. And then the dude comes in here and he has a main event with Rich Swann, and I'll be damned, man, they killed it. It's going to be hard for Josh and Rich to beat this match, and then they probably will. But this match was really, really freaking good. So I got to, hey, look, I haven't been nice to Kenny King in the past, so I got to give the man his props. I thought he was awesome here. And we'll go to some of the play-by-play. So King went for a suplex on Swann, but Swann kneed him in the head, and on the way up, it turned into a DDT. King then hit a spine buster and verbally sparred with the heckler. King hit a soul butt. Swann hit a pump kick, and then King hit a Superman punch and a power slam for a 2 count. Swann went for the poison rana on King, and then hit a soul butt, and then they both got up. Swann went for a kick, but King caught it and transitioned into a half crab. Sorry about that. Both men hit kicks to drop to the mat. Swann got up and missed the Phoenix Splash, and King hit a Tiger Driver for a 2 count. King went for the Royal Flush, and Swann countered with the Cradle for the pinfall. This was one of those, Kushida and Bay. You definitely got to go out of your way to watch. This was better than that match. You got to go out of your way to watch both of these matches. And the crowd, this Orlando crowd was awesome, by the way. So much so that I'm like, I've been hearing rumors that Slammiversary might actually be in Windsor, Ontario. I think they should bring it to Orlando. And I was a proponent of them keeping it in Nashville every year, but man, this Orlando crowd, it's full. They're lively. I know they get a ton of wrestling. They're oversaturated with wrestling, but they seem to really like it, man. And I think that you can get a lot of people to a Slammiversary show, and you can just do the same arena, just, deck it out a little bit more, make it look a little nicer. But I thought this crowd was awesome, and they were really up for this match, and this match was incredible. You got to give it up to both guys, and you especially got to give it up to Kenny King, who I thought underachieved a lot throughout his career, but he seems to be, proving a point. He's on a mission here at Impact. And so far in 2023, it's been the year of the King, man, because he's had 2 really, really good main events. After the match, King attacked Swann and then went to use the chair, but Josh Alexander ran down to make the save. And Swann went to super kick King, but King ducked, and Swann nailed Alexander with the kick as the show went off the air, with Alexander looking at Swann while holding his face. So we got a little twist and a turn there as we head into No Surrender. I think that's next week. Yep, 24th next week. They added a wrinkle finally to this match with Josh and Rich Swann, because up until this moment, it's just been 2 guys that love each other. They just want to be friends and wrestle and just have a fun wrestling match, and may the best man win. That's kind of what the Swann Alexander match is. Honestly, Masha versus Mickie is a bigger match than that. There's more interest in that than there is this one. The trios match is, probably, I'm because of Kenta, coming in for the first time. That's got a lot of interest. So they're going to have to do something to get the people interested in Alexander versus Rich Swann. You're going to have the crowd that's like, well, it's going to be a great match, so I'm interested. Well, yeah, I get that. But what's the story? Other than Rich Swann won a match, and now he's the number 1 contender. We got Rich. He was a former champion. He had he had a great title run, a lot of great matches. He had great matches with Chris Bay, Moose, and he actually got a really good match out of Tommy Dreamer during that run, which is weird. He ended up losing it to Omega, and he never got his title shot back, and I like that story. But what's in it for Josh? What does Josh care about? Let's hear from Josh's side. And so far, Josh's side, Rich is great, and I like Rich. And we're going to have a match. I mean, that's all we're really getting out of Josh here. So maybe Josh will be a little pissed off. That'd be nice. Let's have 2 people that want to wrestle each other and be fucking mad at each other. And they could both be baby faces. That's possible. Look at what they're doing with Adam Page and Jon Moxley. That story is awesome. Those guys are both baby faces. They were having a match. Moxley knocked him out. And Page wants his revenge. And they've had a couple of matches. They've gone back and forth, and each time they wrestle, they hate each other even more. That makes a lot of sense. You don't like it when people beat you, but right now there's no heat between Josh and Rich. So let's get some heat, and maybe this could lead to a little bit of heat. Who knows, man? Who knows what we have in store? Sometimes the storytelling in this promotion, it's long, it's drawn out. A lot of it can be very creative, and then there's a lot that's like paint by numbers. So, and I feel like that's what the Rich and Josh story has been, and it's ultimately going to culminate in a really good match, and that's what we get here, and that's great too. So I'm looking forward to the match. But hey, if you are watching on YouTube, or if you are listening to me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, do me a favor. Excuse me. I want you to head over to patreon.com/fightgamemedia. No, I understand that I'm going solo on that ass again this week, but I'm gonna talk a little bit of wrestling news, it's not exclusive news. I think some other people have picked this up. I'm gonna talk a little bit of Jay White stuff, so stick around.